The filter media replacement will be 9 years old by spring of 2015. Failure to replace the filter media increases the rate of filter backwashes, and as more dirt accumulates, turbidity increases, and plant will be out of compliance with KDHE and the EPA and may result in the plant shutdown. Regarding the water line replacement program funding, Council has previously and often expressed an interest in proactively managing and maintaining the water utility, so this is the reinstatement of a water line replacement program beginning in 2015. For wastewater, under infrastructure management, there's funding in the 2014 revised budget that is simply costs that are not eligible to be included in our KDHE loan. And that is what it is. That's cash. We can't include it in the loan. For the wastewater utility projects in 2015 for infrastructure management, again, the governing body has expressed interest in proactively managing and maintaining the sewer utility. So this is the reinstatement of funding beginning in 2015 for identified infrastructure needs. Could be manhole replacements, could be line replacement, whatever. So this is your utility summary. These are the recommended rate increases for the critical needs I just reviewed, and for reinstating the maintenance programs, and to maintain an adequate fund balance for your new utility director to work with the pending system assessments results. The water rate increase is the same as last year. The wastewater increase is down from 11% last year. The impact to the average customer is 19.5 cents per day. I will remind you also that the new school project debt kicks in 2015, and you had $1.4 million to the sewer fund debt, and you added almost $100,000 to the water fund debt, and you had $1.68 million to your tax levy funds or general fund for non-utility things. So I just want you to remember that you built a street and water and sewer extensions that were not previously planned and accelerated the existing sewer capacity expansion. So you didn't have to raise your mills for the streets, but you do need to adjust for your utilities. So what's next? Tonight, as I discussed, I'd like to go back and talk about higher performance organization, the merit, cost of living. July 21st, next council meeting would be the presentation of the future CIP program from 2016 through 2020, a funding capacity analysis with your financial advisor. That is the night of the public hearing. And on August 4th, we need to adopt the budget. So as a reminder, the city administrator's 2015 proposed budget was developed to build community, build infrastructure, and build the resources you need to support your strategic goals. So with that, I'll answer your questions before we go back to further discussions about merit and COLA or whatever you'd like to talk about.
Well, thank you, Laura, for presenting that. With that being the case, would anybody like to lead off with questions? Christy, you're leaning in. Go ahead.
Back to the studies, specifically the building, parks and rec, and police.
The facility needs study.
Could you talk a little bit more about, I mean, I guess this was one of the things I struggle with, not so much from the parks building, because I understand that that would be reutilized, or the discussion has been to maybe reutilize that for something, but the police building, I don't think that you'll get much of an argument that something needs to be done. So why would we spend money on a study for somebody to tell us something needs to be done? I guess I'm trying to understand what would we hope to gain from that?
Well, go ahead.
All right, go ahead.
On the facility space needs study, it actually will tell us how big we need. They will interview the police department, the different employees, city staff, determine exactly what our needs are for a future. It's not going to say we can still use what we have. It's going to say what we need to build in the future. That's the purpose of that facility space needs study.
So does that somehow feed into some cost savings? So for instance, if we do that in 2015 and we would decide that building a new police station, would that, in your opinion, save us money going forward? I mean, off design costs or what have you, or is this a unique standalone cost?
I actually think it'll save substantially.
Okay.
It'll say how many, square feet you need. It'll actually, the way we've got it written, it'll actually show a building footprint. So it does a lot of that initial design work for you. So we can provide that to whoever we decide, or select to do the actual design. They'll have all that information up front. So I think it'll save substantially.
Okay. My next question, the water line replacement and the $100,000 for wastewater and water, this was Brian probably to you as well, but, that's an increase over what we've seen.
You haven't had anything in there
Right,
for now.
exactly. So my question is, do we have the employees to support that? Or is the plan to contract some of that? I guess I mean, if we have a limited number of employees who have not been doing this before, how is this work going to be handled?
That'd be contract work.
Okay, all right. Both of them?
Yes.
Okay. And then the last question is, we didn't talk anything about electric in here.
We did not.
Okay, so,
Would you like me to talk about electric a little bit?
yes.
Okay, I did, meet with Director Krocek before he left and discuss what was in his budget, and then City Administrator Harrison Lee and I reviewed the budget with, consultant Dave Green, and we left it largely alone. We did some cleanup of things that obviously aren't going to happen, whatever, with the understanding was, most of them are CIP projects. So, and the funding, the day-to-day stuff is already in there. We cleaned it up some. And we left it largely alone because there's adequate funding in there to support whatever your new utilities director wants to come in, and we didn't want to hamstring them, so we just pretty much left it alone.
So there's no plan to do anything with those existing reserves, and there is no plan to increase rates?
There was nothing, no, neither.
Okay.
Now, again, I'm not your utilities director, so I don't know what they will say.
No, that would have to come before us again.
That is
I'm just
exactly
talking
right.
from a budget perspective.
There was no we didn't even review the reserve fund, because there's nothing to talk about, there's no activity in it, it's just sitting there. And there is, some projects in 2015 that may be redirected, because I suspect they won't happen, but that's okay. It's not for me to decide that, but you have a utilities director coming on that can decide that. And there was no rate increase needed for what I can see, and there's adequate funding in there, there's a large fund balance.
So Laura, just the last question in regards to that. If the utilities director comes in and would suggest that those reserves are, higher than what they need to be, and would recommend a rate decrease, or I'm assuming he has some of options, but let's just say one of those was a rate decrease, we can do that as long as we're not increasing. We can do that at any point in
You're talking
time.
about for the budget, because you set maximums?
Yes.
Maximums are set for expenditures.
Okay, got it.
So,
we could decrease rates if we want to come January.
I suppose you could.
Okay. Thank you.
You wouldn't want to, if
We
you can
can-
offset, you wouldn't, what you cannot do after today is increase your expenditures unless we go through another process for publishing and a public hearing. We'd be delaying things.
Okay, thank you.
Started left, so Steve, do you have any questions? or-
Yeah, I've got a couple. We can go back 3 or 4 slides. I think we were talking about the water waste, you talked about line maintenance. And those are, in terms of infrastructure management, is this the beginning of the CIP? Is this the actual funding of some of those initiatives? Or is this supplemental to that, and we're going to come back later with an additional set of initiatives for CIP?
That's correct. That's correct. CIP is 2016 through 2020, and actually, maintenance is not really CIP. Maintenance is maintenance.
Well, it is. However, we
Well,
have been
CIP
neglecting it.
That's true. So maintenance is maintenance, and this is based on your previous input
Yes.
as a consensus. This is essentially the reinstatement of some funding
Mhm.
for replacement. Now, if this turns into a debt payment for a bigger project, well, you've got money in there, but that was not its intent at this time. But it doesn't mean that we can't do that. If we bundled some things and we ended up saying, oh, we can cover a whole lot of debt payment with this, but that wasn't something that's not what this is here.
Sure.
We could, but we'd talk to you about that first.